Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new and beautiful day. It's Wednesday. It is July 1st. Oh my goodness. Where did this day go? Where did this week go? Where did this month go? Where did time go? Oh my goodness. Here we are on July 1st, 2020. It's a beautiful day here in the Enchanted Forest. It's going to be a sunny 90 plus degree day, and it's a beautiful day to be alive. It's a good day to be grateful, and I'm glad to be here with all of you. The chat room is open if you should choose to want to join me here this morning for Exploring Sacred. This morning I thought we could talk about having 2 feet and what it means to walk with 2 feet. A lot of times when we talk about a spiritual pathway, or when we begin to walk a spiritual pathway, perhaps a new pathway, or we take up something new and exciting, we feel as though perhaps it needs to be the only pathway, an exclusive pathway, and all other pathways must fall to the side. Today, let's talk about how it is that we integrate 2 pathways. Maybe there are more than 2 pathways. Maybe you've got more than 2 feet. Exclusivity, for some people, is a reality. There's only one spiritual pathway for them. And that's beautiful. That fits their lifestyle. It fits their earthly journey, their earth walk. But for many of us, we can walk more than one pathway simultaneously. And there are always critics out there about not being exclusive or being Puritan, right? Pure blood in the way that we walk our spiritual path. But there are always going to be critics, and there are always going to be those who question everything that we do. And I like that little adage about it's none of our business what other people think of us. Right? It's their business and what they're thinking of us. And I think that that also includes the pathway that we walk spiritually, or the pathways that we walk spiritually. For myself, I grew up in a very Catholic household, and so I did what every other Catholic kid did. You're baptized, and you have First Communion, and you have confirmation, and all of those wonderful rites of passage. Hey, Tara Rietberg. And during the course of a lifetime, and even though those rites of passage are part and parcel of who we are, our life also becomes influenced by or perfumed by other experiences, other pathways that may draw us into a closer relationship with spirit, with our soul self, call it what you will. And we soon discover perhaps that we're walking with 2 feet. We're walking with both feet. A foot in Catholicism, and maybe a foot in, Hinduism. The reason that I say 2 feet in that case is because, again, we're perfumed by our experiences as a child, and I don't really think that we can always eradicate, or that we need to eradicate, or that we should eradicate and give way our early experiences of spirituality. And I think it's a great good thing to expand upon the base that we were given, or a base that has occurred, and keeping for us and with us those principles that apply, that are right for the pathway. How do you feel about that, Tara? Sometimes people can be criticized for not being exclusively a Christian, or exclusively a Buddhist, or exclusively pagan, or exclusively, because perhaps they've integrated, or they maybe even keep separate, 2 paths. Can you be a Christian and also enjoy yoga? Right? That's one of the more modern day questions that people sometimes get. You can't be a Christian and you can't and do yoga all at the same time. It comes from two different traditions. I say for me, that's ridiculous. I think that we can enjoy the goodness of Creator in many paths. I think probably the most important thing is how we walk those paths. For me, I have one foot in my upbringing of being Catholic, and I have another foot in my being a pipe carrier and pouring lodges, inipis. And so there are two pathways. And we also then sometimes have ancestral pathways that call to us. So I believe that just by virtue of who we are, sometimes we walk with 2 or 3 feet. And I think that the more important part of any and all of it. Good morning, Donna. Tara saying, I agree. I think the more important thing is, how do we walk those paths? Tara is saying, I still use Reiki as well as other practices I've learned from you from the Native American perspective. Yeah, how do we integrate those? Thank you for sharing that, Tara. Is it okay to integrate those? Well, I think that once you've experienced something, it's really hard not to integrate. The question is, are you integrating it in a good way? Are you practicing Reiki in a good way? I practice Reiki every day. There isn't a day that goes by. I've been teaching Reiki for 23 years now. That's a long time, 23 years. Hey, Donna King. And so, how do I walk those paths? How do I walk those paths? I remember years ago, one of my aunties up north, who was a tribal elder, she was a tribal elder, and she found out that I was pouring sweat lodges, inipis, and that I was a pipe carrier. And she told my mom, you tell my niece that she needs to get her butt back in church and put those old ways down. And I asked Mom, so how did you respond to that? And she said, well, what's wrong with walking both paths? Well, you have to pick, you have to choose. Either she's going to continue to be a good Catholic Christian, or she's going to carry that pipe. And for her anyway, there was exclusivity. You're either one or you are the other. And of course I didn't agree with that, and I've been carrying that chanupa, that pipe, for almost 12, 13 years now. And I'm also an ordained minister, Coptic minister. I went to 4 years of training to become an ordained minister. So there are many, Coptic people say to me, what is that Coptic? What does that mean? Well, there are a lot of people who don't take a minute to research what anything means. They'll just take a look at what is being spewed on social media to find out what something means. I prefer to be a researcher myself. And so a Coptic is an Egyptian, right? Coptic means Egyptian Christian. It's the original Egyptian Christian church. It's the oldest church of Christianity on the face of Grandmother Earth. And so I am an ordained Coptic minister. I do marry people, and I bury people, and I baptize people, and I was ordained 12 years ago, right simultaneous to the time that I became a pipe carrier. And I walk both of those paths, 2 feet, 1 foot in Christianity and 1 foot in the indigenous, right? And it works beautifully for my life. And all the while, as they say, if you're born a Catholic, you're just always a Catholic. And I'm cool with that too. I'm really cool with all of that. For some people, they meet me and they tell me I'm way too Christian. And some people meet me and they say I'm not Christian enough. Some people meet me and say I'm not, I'm this or I'm that. And so really what it comes down to, and the reason for the show, is that just be you. And whatever path you're walking, be a good human being. Be a good person. Walk it with integrity. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Rob. Sometimes the choice is made for us. Sometimes the choice is made for us. I remember, for my kids, Dane started out at Catholic school, and the kids were baptized Catholic, and they made their first communion and all of those good sorts of things, and continued on with catechism until it came time for confirmation. And that's where I kind of parted with tradition, family tradition, and said to both of my kids, I am not at the age of 15 going to make you confirm one faith or another. I'm going to allow you to decide to do that when you get older. And you may choose to take up confirmation when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, or maybe never. And that's up to you. But to your point, Rob, I said to them, I'm not going to choose that for you. You're going to choose that for you, whatever that happens to be. And so this idea of exclusivity, for some people it works brilliantly, and for others not so much. And I think what the beauty of life, at least for me, the beauty of life is exploring where everybody's feet have landed. Right? I want to know more about Buddhism. I want to know more about Hinduism. I want to know more about and about and about and about. And that's why I travel. And I ask questions. And I want to know. Tell me what it's like to be. What's it like to go to ashram? What's it like to go to temple? What's it like to do that? And the beauty of that is usually you get an invitation to participate at least once. And I think that that's pretty magnificent. And usually when I receive an invitation, I'm all about saying yes, because I want to know. I want to experience. I want to breathe it in. I want to feel what perhaps I might not otherwise be exposed to feeling in my connections. Last autumn, when Amantha Murphy was here from Ireland, she and I had this great conversation, and she said to me, well, Dana, you walk with 2 feet. And I said, explain that to me, Amantha, that I walk with 2 feet. And subsequent to that, my sister Del Marie told me the same thing. You walk with 2 feet. You have 1 foot in the pipe way, the Chanupa way, the Native American spirituality, and you have that other foot in the Christian way. I said, oh, that's having 2 feet. She said, yeah, you walk with 2 feet. I said, oh, well, you know what? That seems to be appropriate for me. There are a lot of people who walk 2 feet. I know some people that walk with 3 feet, sometimes more feet. And I find it really interesting how they walk. Rob is saying, I may, but for now I'm walking where I'm led. Yeah, exactly. Leaving it open. Leaving it open. I remember when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a nun, right? Well, that kind of flew out the window when I was, introduced to boys. When that whole thing started. And then when, Stevie Nicks came around, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, she's not a nun and she's pretty cool. I think I'd rather be like her, and Grace Slick and all of that good kind of a thing. We can walk with 2 feet. We can walk with more feet. How do you walk with it? And it's not to say that we don't have questions about either one of those feet. Oh, me and my sister Barbara, we get into some great conversations out on the res. Sometimes she just shakes her head at me. I thought you're an ordained minister. Well, I am, but that's not to say that I find all of Christianity to be perfect, because it ain't. And the same thing is true with medicine people and carrying a pipe. It ain't perfect. So I do have questions about it. I'm always having questions. I think I was born with a lot of questions. And rather than just let everything inform me, I want to I want to find out where I'm going to be informed, and I want to go there and be informed, usually by experiencing things. That's usually how that goes. If anyone would have told me as a little girl that one day I would walk with these 2 feet, really part of me would not have been surprised because of my innate love of Native America. It's breathtaking to me. And the way I was raised, in a home. My mother always taught me, that every religion has a piece of everything, of the one truth, whatever that happens to be. They all have a piece of it. They all pretty much try to follow the golden rule, but she always had this caveat that said the ones that really have it right are Native Americans, because Native Americans understand that God is in everything, including the rocks and the trees. Well, I think that St. Francis of Assisi also believed that. I think that there are a lot of mystics, the Sufi mystics, Hafiz, right? Believe that as well. Understand that. It's not a belief, it's an understanding. It's an understanding. Sometimes we can try to take our feet out of one path or another. I know a lot of people who say that they're recovering Catholics, that Catholicism has, created disharmony in their life, sometimes damage and woundedness. In the family that I grew up in, when all of the clergy abuse was unveiled, boy, that really, really caused trauma for some of the older relatives, trauma. And that, of course, is not exclusive to the Catholic Church. Clergy abuse has been going on around the world since there was clergy of any sort. But we have like shocks to our system sometimes in the path that we're on. The first time that I learned about how sometimes medicine people will use the medicine for not good things. The Pollyanna in me that wishes to believe that everyone tries to be a good human being, I was shocked. And seeing it firsthand, disheartened. So sometimes we find with a path, what we discover is that it's humans that are walking the path, right? And in our humanity, we are not perfect. We're not perfect. I don't think we're supposed to be perfect in our humanity. I think we're supposed to be imperfect, but perfect in our perfection. Right? I have one person in my life who always used to say, if somebody says to me that they're not perfect, I'm immediately suspicious, because they're saying it for a reason. There's something dark lurking in their shadow that they have to declare that they're not perfect. Like there's this grand mea culpa that's going on before everyone finds out the juicy tidbits. Well, I will often say I am not perfect because I'm not, and I know that. Oh, Lordy. I've had lipstick on my teeth and toilet paper trailing behind my pumps more than one occasion in my life. I get that. And I also get that when we're walking a path or 2 or 3, we're dealing with humans. We're dealing with humans and trying to connect with the perfection of the heart and mind of creation. Call that what you will. And it isn't all perfect. Yeah, so did St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Right on. I love St. Bernard of Clairvaux. Clairvaux, clairvoyance, clear seeing. As a mystic, as a seer, the Catholic Church refers to me as a seer. And so I don't find that, for myself, I don't see myself as a recovering Catholic. I find myself as a Catholic with my eyes wide open because, for me, it comes down to the connection with spirit and the paths that I walk. I think we all choose a path because for some reason it brings us closer to spirit, God, creator, the maker, Wakantanka, the Tunkashilas, right? Allah. It brings us closer to that, to the source of our being, the source of our own soul, and maybe our reason for being here. And so a path finds us. We find the path, we meet in the middle. The path is brought to us. The path is just given to us, however the path comes to us. And we dip our toes into it, and sometimes we step into it or we sink right up into it. Right? We find ourselves mired in it. There we are. I think always looking for a connection to home. Being realistic about it, I think, is important. Doing away with childish thinking or childhood thinking, I think, is something that a whole lot of folks are going through right now in the way of the world. Doing away with childish thinking or childhood thinking is not easy to do. Terry Ruel did a really great show about that not too long ago. She's up at 11 o'clock this morning, just behind me here on the radio network. But walking with integrity, and what is it that's drawn us into? Well, for me, growing up Catholic allowed me the understanding of angels. That angels were real. We were taught about, I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't know about the archangels and how they walk with us and they protect us and they guide us. And I don't remember a time when I didn't know about the saints and that there's a saint for everything. I mean, there are saints that oversee plumbers, secretaries, electricians. You want to get pregnant. I mean, there's a saint or an overlighting ally or spirit guide, right? Eventually I learned, so those are actually spirit guides. And some of them weren't necessarily humans that lived either. It gets really juicy. If you have your foot on a path, I really encourage everybody to research the origins of. I think it's remarkable when we take a minute in our lives to research the origins of the path. The origins of the pipe, for me, of course, comes from the white buffalo calf woman, Te Sawi. And that's why typically, well, not this year because Arvald is not having Sundance because of COVID. Typically, I would be at Arvald's place for Sundance because that is where the white buffalo calf pipe is kept, and he is the keeper, and Ivan is the keeper. Ivan and Arvald Looking Horse, they keep that pipe. They continue to tell the story, to keep it in a good way and have ceremonies. And so researching that and the blessing of knowing who it is that keeps those pipes, right? But then, researching the Coptic Templars, not just the Coptic Orthodox Church, Coptic Templars, the esoteric Coptics, that's my association, the Templar arm. Again, mysticism, white buffalo calf woman, Te Sawi, mysticism, Catholicism, mysticism, the saints, the angels. And going back further into that, I remember being in Egypt, 2009, and going there to the library at Alexandria. Boy, that was something else, to go into the caverns of the ruins of the library of Alexandria and could feel in the caverns, the library, the information still there. I mean, information, whether it's in the written word, the spoken word, video, whatever, there's an energy to it. So the energy of the written word is still very much present in the caverns of the ruins of the library at Alexandria. You can feel it. You're bathed in it. It's extraordinary. And then making our way to the monastery, the Coptic monastery, which was built, I believe, if I'm recalling it correctly, 38, in the year 38, Common Era. Some people say AD. 38, think about that. It's like they're in the first century. Somewhere around there in the first centuries when this was built. So it's old. And I remember going into the monastery itself, the worship part. There was a group of us. And the amazing iconography of the archangels. And the iconography of John the Baptist. And there's a ancient fresco of John the Baptist baptizing Yeshua in the River Jordan with that beautiful white dove, right? We would say Wamblishka, white eagle, or Wakia Shka, the white thunderbird, descending down from the heavens in grace. And in that same room is the crypt and the body of John the Baptist, who of course is the forefather of the Baptist church. And I remember, looking down into that hole where his remains were taken out of. And at that time, you were allowed to touch his sarcophagus. And, I remember having my hands on his sarcophagus and touching the dirt, where his bones, his relics were brought up. And all the while standing on the grounds and underneath my feet are the bones of the Coptic popes. And feeling the antiquity of the path that I chose as a Coptic minister, there I was standing on the antiquity of it. Before that, of course, being in the temples, which is the origins of, right? All of those magnificent temples and pyramids. I wanted to know, if I'm going to have my foot in the path, I want to know what path I'm following and who am I following in the footsteps of. And here I am in the presence of John the Baptist, the baptizer, of Yeshua, the Essene, going to green grass and being at the origins of Tesawi, having been to Rome. And you can appreciate, Donna, this because Hihane washte chue, lilo washte. And being there, at the Vatican, and Donna, Rome is your flight gig, so you know what I mean about the antiquity of Rome, and going to Greece, knowing that I have 2 feet. I want to know where my feet are going, but more than that, I want to know whose feet tread those paths before me. Who's been there before me? And to feel it and to breathe it in, not just picking a place. Even with Reiki, as a Reiki teacher, I had a wonderful conversation with a man. His name is Hyakuten Inamoto from Japan. He's actually, at the time I was speaking to him, he was the Buddhist priest at the Kurama Temple, which they being the old ones, say is the birthplace of Reiki. And I talked to him about the origins of Reiki as he understood it, because he was a student of Dr. Hayashi, who was a student of Dr. Usui. So for me, as you can kind of sort of tell, before I pick a path, I want to know about that path. I haven't made it yet to Kurama, but one day I will, take up the offer of my dear friends Paul and his beautiful wife, Shino, to come for a visit, to walk there. My Chue, my sister Del Marie, is in the house, and she and I have many times been with one another at Arval's place at Greengrass and other ceremonies, and in the ancientness of it, to feel it, to breathe it, to be with it. And not everybody can go to those places, of course. I understand that I'm very blessed to be able to go to the origins of where my feet walk, the pathways of Christianity and the pathways of the Chanupa, the Red Road, and to be in both places in a good way, hopefully. I am in them in a very good way. My sister Della, Bad Wound, tells me I'm doing a pretty good job. She walks in both worlds. She's a retired Catholic nun and obviously walks the Red Road way. And she and I have had wonderful conversations about that. And, but researching the path that you walk, having joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, I say forget about it. If it doesn't bring me some joy and laughter, I learned a long time ago. If it doesn't bring joy and laughter, it's not meant for me. There needs to be some joy. There needs to be some laughter. I remember for years being taught that, you need to be pious when you go inside a sweat lodge. When you're in that NEP, you need to be pious. And then I went to my first NEP out on Pine Ridge, and there was so much laughter, so much joy and laughter in the teaching that laughter is medicine. And I remember also having a beer with Sister Irene Mary and Sister Andrea, lunch hour at One Trick Pony in Grand Rapids. They invited me to go to lunch. So I met the two good sisters, a Franciscan and a Dominican, on my lunch break from the newspaper. And I walked in and they had these, great big tall cold ones sitting in front of them. And I kind of looked and they said, if you're going to have lunch with us, you need to have a beer. So I thought, well, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And it would not have been my choice, honestly. But there I sat having a beer with Sister Andrea and Sister Irene Mary. Amazing. And there's the human aspect. There's the humanity. Allowing for the humanity along any pathway, I think, is pretty doggone essential. Even allowing for our own humanity is essential. Those that we look to for guidance or mentoring or learning. Exactly, Rob. I thought the Romans drank wine. Yeah. Be interesting to know if they had their own pubs going on at the time, if they were also brewing beer. Isn't that funny? And ironically, now Sister Irene Mary lives in Rapid City, South Dakota. So many wondrous paths to take. And all along, in our ancestry, our ancestors are walking those paths with us, and they inform us. Our ancestors are in our blood, they're in our bones, and they inform us all the time. We may be looking around thinking that we're the only ones looking through our eyes, but we're also experiencing the world based on our DNA and our ancestry and the experiences of our ancestors. They come right along with us. That was really evident to me last year in Ireland with Amantha, one of the stone circles in particular. The Irish relatives, Donna, were very present. There they were. And it's not that they were there physically with me, but obviously spiritually and in the blood and the bones, they were there. And I could feel them, and I could feel their gratitude. Oftentimes, I think we have deja vu for ourselves, of course, but I do believe sometimes we have deja vu, and it's our ancestors informing us that we are someplace that our ancestors have been, and they've been witness to, and we're drawn to. I really miss this year not having been to Georgia yet, not having been to South Dakota yet. It's for me, the pandemic it's brought a lot of blessings, frankly, the pandemic. And it's also, because I do love being with people, it's also been difficult for me not to be able to go to Georgia. I mean, I've passed through Georgia for most of my life. I lived in Georgia as a child. I lived in the South as a child. That's where Dad was stationed, always, in the South. That's where I'm from. That's where my people are from. It's where the blood runs really, 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 really deep. And simultaneous to that, my blood also runs, my soul blood runs very deep in the Dakotas. Right? So being there on the soil, where our feet literally touch the earth. I keep my cousin Wanda gave me some Georgia red dirt. She and her wonderful husband, Dan. Dan found the reddest Georgia dirt that he could find for me. And I have it here in my room with me so that that soil is there for me. Putting our feet on those places, I think, is symbolic, and it's also restorative, I believe. How do you feel about that, Chue? Yeah, I miss my family in Georgia. I do. And Florida. They're all down south, 1,000%. They're in the south, and they're in the west. They're in the Black Hills. And those are the ways that my feet walk on Grandmother Earth. And I miss not being able to explore, right? Other parts across the pond right now. All right, Chue is saying, I used to think that you had to be pious when walking the red road. But then I remember who I am also. I still have that inner child in me that romps the 4 rooms of my heart. I love that, Chue. Romps the 4 rooms of my heart. I love that. Yeah. If there's no laughter, if there's no joy, it is not meant for me. And I will leave. I have left, I left a career. I will leave situations that no longer bring me joy. Life is too short to not have joy. And I don't mean joy all the time. Don't get me wrong. But if there's not an element of joy, of laughter, 33 years was a really great run at that newspaper. And at the end of the 33 years, the joy had been sucked out of the room. And I knew it was no longer for me. Grass doesn't grow under feet. Yeah. No, grass really doesn't grow. I was raised, the Sarge always said that he was a gypsy. He had a gypsy heart. And I think my biological daddy, Billy King, also had a gypsy heart. Correct me if I am wrong, Donna. I think you probably knew my daddy better than anybody. I think you probably did. You and Vicky. So I think I come from a line of gypsies, explorers, adventurers, with their feet in a whole lot of places. Right? Always moving. Yeah, grass doesn't grow under my feet. Todd and I are buying a camper. We're picking it up tomorrow. That's how much of a gypsy I am. If I can't fly where I need to get to right now in a good way and stay in a hotel in a good way, we bought a camper because I need to be on the move. I need to be able to get to South Dakota and not necessarily stay at the casino hotel. I just need to be able to pick up and go and have my own place to stay right now. And I said to Todd, let's get a vanity plate on that. And he said, well, what do you want to put on it? And I said, I want to condense it down, but I want it to say Gypsy Van. Yeah. He liked that, so that's what we're going to do. Always moving, always cruising. Yeah. And here's the thing too, everybody. Not everybody's going to understand where your feet tread, where they've been. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everyone's going to understand the path that you're currently walking. And you can change paths, by the way. You are not stuck in one position. But not everybody's going to understand it. Not everybody's going to appreciate it. And that's okay. Walk it anyway. If you're walking in a good way, in a wash day way, if you're walking it in a wash day way, keep on walking. Keep on enjoying life. Life is so short. It can be over in the blink of an eye. Less than that. Done. Enjoy your path, research your path, walk your path, do it in a good way. Find out who's walked before you. Allow it to lead you, but not blindly. Not blindly. Eyes wide open. I think that's something that we learn as we get older. Have respect for everything. I have respect for all the pathways. I've learned a lot in my 57 years. And respect goes a long way. Sometimes you just need to button up and listen. Sit and listen. Watch. Experience. It's reminding me, for some reason, a few years back, I did a silent retreat in Jackson, Michigan, at a Romanian Orthodox monastery, convent, I guess. And I decided I needed to go on silent retreat. And here are all these amazing, nuns in their Orthodox black wool habits with the high hats, not saying a word, cooking extraordinary meals. They are carpenters. They make exquisite furniture and food. Right there on a cemetery, quite interesting. But I remember that night going to midnight vespers. Oh, I love vespers. Midnight vespers. And they were chanting all of the prayers in Romanian. All of the prayers. And they were singing some of them of the songs in Latin. And then they all looked at me. I was the only one at midnight vespers. Not everybody appreciates the midnight aspect of the vespers. And there I was, like, steeped in frankincense and myrrh, right? You could hardly see them because there was so much frankincense and myrrh. And it was lit by candles. It was a tiny chaplet. And so candles, frankincense and myrrh, and the chanting in Romanian and singing in Latin. And they looked at me, and this moment of divine inspiration, they looked at me and they had a little conversation. And I don't know what, but I kind of do know what and who inspired them to sing the Ave Maria in English. Broken English, but in English. And there I was at midnight mass by myself, by candlelight, in this magnificent smoke of frankincense and myrrh, listening to my favorite hymn of all time, if that's a hymn, the Ave. They sang it in English, and then they sang it for me in Latin. Exquisite. It's moments like that you know that you're on the right path. You have one foot in the right path. And I think that we need to check that out for all of our feet. Sitting there with my sisters in South Dakota. Or sometimes we're together in Montana. Sometimes we're together in Wyoming, right, Chue? And you're in those moments with that other foot. And you have these moments of absolute bliss and understanding that you are exactly where you need to be. And your soul is so joyful that there are no words to describe it. Sometimes you just cry. Then you know that your other foot is exactly where it needs to be. Because it's not so much the humanity in us that's moved, it's our soul that's moved. It's our humanity that needs to walk with it in a good way, but the soul says, here you are. Yeah. Dell is saying, metaphorically, I would say, walking the spiritual way is to be balanced with honoring and respecting all that is. Exactly. Haye. Whatever path you're walking, may it bring you joy. May it bring you moments of bliss, of questioning, of strength, courage, when times get tough. And more than anything, may whatever path you are taking, wherever you find your feet, help you to understand more about who you are and your connection to the source of who you are. With that, everybody, Terry Ruel is here with us at the top of the hour, and it's always a wonderful show with Terry Ruel. Thank you for walking the path with me. Have a beautiful day, and get out there and shine as only you can shine. Blessings be, everybody.